I need to read a statement about Act 48 and Act 45 credits. The Montgomery County Intermediate Unit is an approved provider of Act 48 professional development credit hours for those with Pennsylvania teaching or administrative certificates attending this session. This session is also offering Act 45 credit hours as part of the program being provided by PDE and the Lancaster-Lebanon Intermediate Unit. Participants are required to attend the session from beginning to end to receive either credit hours. In an effort to maintain the integrity of the Act 48 and Act 45 reporting system, Act 48 and Act 45 labels will only be distributed at the conclusion of the session. Labels will not be available at the registration table, therefore it is the responsibility of each participant seeking credit hours to ensure that they receive a label from me prior to leaving the room at the end of the session. You will attach a label to either the Act 48 or Act 45 card. You're required to complete the 3 information blocks located on the left-hand side of the Act 48 or Act 45 card in its entirety, printing information clearly and signing your name in the appropriate place. You must list your professional ID number. If you have any questions regarding these guidelines, please see me after the session. Now it's time for Joseph Mahoney and Jenny Lent to speak about the Fab Lab.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. My name is Jenny Lent. I'm the Director of Curriculum at Intermediate Unit 1, and I have my colleague here, and I'll let him introduce himself.
I'm Joe Mahoney. I'm the Director of Mental Health and Social Work Services at IU1.
So today we're excited to bring to you our Fab Lab. And if you haven't had the chance, I highly recommend stopping up in the exhibit hall. We have our Fab Lab trailer, mobile trailer outside, but our trailer allows all of our equipment to be hauled off the trailer and pulled inside. So we have everything inside in the exhibit hall. All the equipment is running. You can check it out, see what we have, see what we can make, and talk to our Fab Lab coordinator. So highly recommend checking that out at some point today. Our presentation today is on fabricating change and how our Fab Lab has really changed how we have provided services to our mental health students. So, we introduce ourselves here. A little bit about Intermediate Unit 1. We provide service to a 3-county area in southwestern Pennsylvania below Pittsburgh, Greene, Washington, and Fayette counties. We have, in addition to our 25 districts and 5 CTCs that we service, we also provide service to 4 campus schools that we operate. And in those campus schools, we have students with special education and alternative education needs. And you can see up there, we service.
You can't see on this side.
Sorry. I'll turn them out of the way on this side too. You can see that we service 4 different locations. We have 2 Washington County locations, 1 Fayette and 1 Greene County. And you can see in those locations, some of them are 7 to 12, some of them are 3 to 12, some of them are K to 12, some of them just special ed, some of them have autism, some students that are alternative ed. So we have a variety of students who are sent to us because they are not able to learn in the way that their home school needs them to learn. So they come to us, and we've created a different way to service those students. And in that curriculum that we offer, the Fab Lab is a vital component to that. So just to give you a brief overview of the Fab Lab, a little over 4 years ago, we received funding from corporate Chevron and the Fab Foundation we were looking for funding for a mobile fabrication lab. It funds equipment such as 3D printers, vinyl cutters, laser cutters, CNC routing machines, circuitry and soldering, and we were looking to have a mobile lab. Well, much to our surprise, the Fab Foundation and Chevron came back to us and said, we'd love to grant you a mobile lab, but in addition, we'd love for you to put a stationary lab in one of your campus schools. So we were very lucky to receive a grant for both a mobile lab and a stationary lab. And it was right around the time in our schools where we were hoping to change how we were instructing our students with special needs and alternative education. So at that point in time, we realized that students were coming to us, and we really weren't doing that much different with those students. So we were getting the same results as the home district, and we needed to make some changes. So before this grant, we started utilizing a book called The Third Teacher which is about the environment and how the environment has a huge impact on your students. So we started to make small changes about the environment. We changed the wall colors, we changed to flexible seating. That was all about 5 years ago or so, and really changed the way we were looking at the school as an environment. Then came along this wonderful grant opportunity for us, and we implemented our Fab Lab, and it just exploded with those students. So in our campus schools, we started with one lab at our Colonial campus, and we were lucky enough by the local Chevron office to be granted a second grant for a second stationary lab in our Waynesburg location. And in the fall, we received a third grant for a stationary lab in our Washington location, plus a second mobile lab. So we've been very blessed by Chevron and their support in helping us reach these students with special needs. A little bit about our lab. I'd like to play a video for you so that you get a little bit better idea about our students that we serve and what our lab is all about.
Hi, I'm Don Martin, and welcome to IU1. Here in Intermediate Unit 1, we have something very special and unique. It's our Fab Lab, and it's located here at our Colonial site. These students that come to this school, they are special education and or alternative education. Part of the reason they were here is they couldn't conform to the rules and the traditional values of their own school. And what we found out, we were traditionalizing that instruction even more. We really stressed through a lot of professional development, a lot of great work with our teachers, was that the teacher should never really be the highlight of the classroom, but the student should be.
Yeah, it's possible for anybody to add technology in our classroom. If we can do it up here, anybody can do it. We serve a variety of students with special education accommodations, students who have emotional support services. We have students who have mental health needs. The technology has really engaged them in the tasks and activities to still meet the academic success that they need.
We started the Fab Lab about a year ago with a partnership with Chevron and the Fab Foundation, and it's been fantastic for our students. The kids really enjoy coming in and getting to make different things and see how all the machines work.
I've been a secondary math teacher here at Colonial for the past 16 years. Seeing the difference between the students going from the classroom using algebra books and worksheets as opposed to coming in the lab where we're doing collaborative projects. The kids are working on social skill activities, working together to create different things, design things from scratch. It truly has been an amazing experience.
There's all kinds of different routes you can go. Mainly the design process in general. You can teach manufacturing principles, machine operations. These are all good skills that you can use in the workforce.
We made these vinyl stickers to put on our Best Marketing Queen Award to give it some talk when we present these awards to the women.
It's a maker shop. It's digital fabrication, which is graphic designing or 3D modeling. It's all design work from a computer where we provide the tools and machines to take a student's design and actually create a toolpath out of it, make them create, so whether it's cutting it, printing it, it's going to manipulate some kind of material to have their design become a reality essentially.
We can cut glass, plastic, and wood. We can make moldings and castings. They get to let their imaginations run wild and come up with all different kind of ideas and different projects to try to work on.
We don't get in here as much as we want, but when we do incredible things together. We make plenty of things that we present to other people. We win stuff from other schools. We've even won stuff with the football teams. But we made our school a better place.
They excel so much in here. The opportunities that you can have in here with these kids is just amazing.
A lot of facilitation is taking place here. When you go into the Fab Lab, you don't see much direct instruction that's going on. They really transform into being that facilitator of learning and really putting the kids front and center.
I like the Fab Lab because I want to be a graphic designer, so the Fab Lab is really influential for me. I get to be hands-on with the laser engraver, the 3D printer.
I had zero behavior issues. They're all fully engaged and they have no problem following any classroom rules. They're very creative and they don't ever get a chance to show that.
I want to go to Ohio State and fulfill my dream of becoming a graphic designer.
I I really can't even put into words how fun it is working in here. It's almost like you're not even at work.
The kids really appreciate the opportunities that they have. They love doing work in here, and it makes me excited to be able to help them unlock that enjoyment.
I have so much fun in this job. I couldn't ask for anything better.
I love my teachers. I know I can go to them for anything. They won't judge me. They're just really nice, genuine people.
My advice is, you can't come in and just be a stormtrooper and tell people what they're going to do. You have to really engage them and then let them tell you what they want to do. It's a team effort, and the work has just begun. Our design team continues, our work with the Fab Lab continues, and the end result here, we know that we're educating those students for the day, but we also know that we're preparing them for the future.
So in that video, you were able to see a little bit about what our Fab Lab looks like in the background. You were also able to hear from some of our students that are in our Colonial Site campus. I think the best statement in there comes from Kevin McKee, who's our Fab Lab teacher at Colonial, who says, "I've had 0 discipline issues." So that is what Joe and I are going to talk about today, and the impact that this has had on students with mental health needs and how that has impacted discipline issues. And we have data to show you that we've already collected, and we're excited to say that we'll be working with the Mid-Atlantic REL to do a full study in our lab that will get published probably next year. So pretty exciting work happening inside of our lab. Spinning wheel of death right now, right? So, so the curriculum and lesson plans, I'll give you a little information on that before we talk about the mental health side. We have a team that gets together that's comprised of myself, our assistant executive director, Sarah, our design and innovation coordinator. Joe's part of those meetings sometimes, our Fab Lab teachers, our Fab Lab manager, and some curriculum specialists. And we hold monthly meetings where we plan what curriculum is taking place, not just in our stationary labs with those students, but also in our mobile labs that goes out across the state and the United States. So in our lab, we actually have a pacing guide that's up here where we have lessons for K-5, middle school, and high school, where we pace lessons out throughout the year in 4 9 weeks, where students are able to utilize all of the machines and then utilize them together at the end. We also provide time in our curriculum. As you saw, some of those students were making awards. We provide time in our curriculum for outside people to place orders with us. And we always have people who want awards made, or t-shirts made, or something made for what they're doing. So it provides the opportunity for our students to learn a little bit about business and possible career paths as we're taking orders from outside companies as well. So we do have a particular curriculum. This year, I'm excited to say one of the things that we threw in for this year that they're starting to work on right now are wind chimes. And those wind chimes will be donated to local nursing homes for folks to have something nice in their room that was donated from our students. So we do a lot of outreach to the community. We try to make donations, but then we also do projects where people pay us to create t-shirts or other things for them. I will say that Scopes DF, if you haven't been to that website, if you just type in Scopes hyphen capital D, capital F, that is the Fab Foundation's main site for lesson plans. So if you're looking for specific lesson plans, I would recommend going there. The other place where you can go is IU1.org/FabLab. If you go there, there's a button for curriculum, and you'll see multiple projects that we have done. Not everything, but some of the things that we have done inside our Fab Lab on our website as well. So we want, before we start talking about mental health, we want to do a small activity with you, since we're all about project-based learning and hands-on. So you're going to give each of you a bag, and inside of that bag are puzzle pieces. And this puzzle was downloaded from Thingiverse, which is a place where you can go to get 3D printed or laser cut projects. So we'd like each of you to take the pieces of the puzzle out of the bag. You can use the chair next to you, use your lap, whatever you'd like to do. The goal of is that it becomes, you take the pieces in here and it becomes a solid cube like this. So I have a finished product that is taped together just like this. So you're looking to put those pieces of the puzzle together in a cube. We're going to give you 3 or 4 minutes to see if you can put those pieces together into a cube. You can talk to each other, you can work by yourself, whatever's comfortable for you, but we will give you a few minutes to put that together. All right, so before we talk about this activity, I'm going to ask a question. So I want some feedback. How did you feel when you were doing this activity?
Frustrated.
Frustrated? How else?
Incompetent.
Confident? What else? Determined? What else?
Thinking a kid probably completed this in
Or 2 seconds?
in 2 seconds
I was
compared to
thinking
you
of
doing
me
it.
last Sunday, you're right.
Did anybody in here get it completed? We did have one person that got it done fairly quickly.
You've done it before.
What's your IQ?
No.
So let's think about that conversation we just had. And I heard people like whispering, like getting frustrated and upset because you couldn't get it figured out right. There weren't any instructions, there were just a couple of pieces. We do this activity with people because, yes, it can be solved. We have somebody that solved it. You can see my solved cube up here. You can solve it. It is difficult, but the feelings that you felt during this activity are the same feelings that our kids with mental health needs feel every day in the classroom. They feel that frustration, and they don't know how to handle that frustration, so oftentimes that comes out in a different way. but they're feeling those same feelings you just felt as you were trying to put that cube together, and it just wasn't working. So we love to do this activity, number one, because it can be easily printed on a 3D printer if you have one of those in your Fab Lab, and it's a great activity to do with kids, to put them in groups, get them thinking, get them working together in problem solving. But it's also a nice way to show you the same feelings that our students with mental health needs have when they're sitting in your classrooms.
Thanks, Jen. All right, before we talk a little bit about mental health in general.
Before he starts, if you want to Google it, if you just put 3D printed cube in there, so 3D printed, what is it called?
Coffins cube.
Coffins cube. You can search it on Google and it'll show you how to put it together correctly for the solution.
And then you tape it, so you never have to do it.
That one's taped.
This one's taped.
What's it called?
COFFIN, I believe. It's Coffin's Cube.
I wasn't good at No, those are
No, those are yours, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I have a new bunch of toy now for my next.
So before we start really talking about mental health, I want to have just kind of a brief discussion. What does mental health mean to you? Raise your hand, shout out some thoughts. When you hear mental health, what do you think of?
Well-being.
Well-being, good. What else?
Social emotional skills.
Social emotional skills, how we navigate.
Self-regulation.
Self-regulation skills, excellent.
Just being at peace with yourself.
Okay, good, I like that. I like that. Being at peace with yourself.
Turning off the voices.
Turning off the voices. We all sometimes have that running monologue in the back of our heads, right? So learning how to navigate that and shut them down a little bit sometimes.
Shut them down or change them.
Change them, change what they're telling you. Yeah, absolutely. I like that. What else? Any other thoughts in your mental health?
I think emotional and psychological.
Emotional, psychological is not. When we hear mental health, we don't instantly go physical. You know, you're thinking more internally. Even though there is that kind of connection between mental and physical well-being, the mental health is more inside, more than emotional well-being. Good. So as Jenny said, at IU1 we have a pretty wide array of programs that we offer for students that have severe emotional or mental health needs. We have the comprehensive therapeutic emotional support programs, which we're going to talk about. That those students have been very active in the study, the preliminary study that we've been doing in the Fab Lab. We have outpatient clinics. We operate a community-based outpatient clinic, and we have 7 school-based satellites. So we have clinics right inside of our school buildings where students and families can receive treatment right there during the school day with a therapist, a psychiatrist. Actually, Edie Woods has one in her building through us down in Waynesburg, Central Green Elementary School, Waynesburg Central Elementary School. So we've really tried, and we continue to expand and to try to meet these needs because, as we know, the mental health not only is really important to try to teach these kids how to regulate, how to manage those voices sometimes in their head, how to navigate social and emotional situations. But also it's on the rise. We're seeing more and more students diagnosed with pretty severe mental health issues, not only diagnosed at higher rates, but also diagnosed younger than ever before. So we've really tried to kind of respond to those needs, and we continue to try to respond to those needs, especially in the counties that IU1 services. We're pretty rural. Greene County, where our outpatient clinics are, and I keep pointing to Edie Wood, she's a principal down there in Greene County. It's a really, really rural, isolated place. Washington County is probably our least rural, but it does still have really rural areas. Fayette County, also very rural. So in those counties, there's not a lot of great access to mental health treatment. Getting them access to physical health sometimes is a challenge, let alone mental health. So we really try to get creative in what we do to kind of meet those needs. And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit. Some of the programming that we have and the students that we work with more specifically. Some of the most common mental health diagnoses that we see in our programs: mood disorders, your depression. For kids, a lot of times they won't give them like a true depressive diagnosis. It'll be like mood disorder not otherwise specified. So depression, I'm going to go just a little bit about each of these, just to give you some base knowledge and background so you kind of get a better feel for what our students are going through that come through our doors. students that struggle with mood disorders, depression, this is probably the most common one, the one that most people think of when they think of mental health, is kind of that depression, that mood issue. So these students have disturbances. Disturbances within their mood, but disturbances within their mood that differentiate from their baseline functioning. So depression and mood disorder in general is really tough for a clinician to diagnose sometimes because it's very gray. It's change in sleep. What does change in sleep mean? For some students, they might sleep 12 hours a day, but that's their norm, so that's not a concern. Some students might need 4 hours of sleep to function. Again, that's their norm. That might not be a concern. It might be that student that was functioning pretty successfully at 4 hours of sleep now is going to 12 hours of sleep to function. It might be the reverse. A student that was functioning on 12 hours now is going on 4 hours of sleep. So you really, with mood disorders, we look at a lot of disturbances, changes from the norm. You know, you'll hear a lot about people that struggle with mood disorders, kids that struggle with mood disorders, they'll look at appetite. Again, it's appetite changes. Are they eating more than normal or less than normal? So to really kind of get an accurate diagnosis for a mood disorder, depressive disorder, you have to really know the baseline functioning of that student. So it's changes in sleep, changes in appetite, obviously changes in mood. You know, these might be your kids that are pretty happy-go-lucky, upbeat, engaged, energetic, and all of a sudden you start noticing they're withdrawing from their peers, they're not completing their homework, their head's down a lot. That one's more obvious. I think that's what we usually think of when we think of depression. In boys, and we service males a lot, young boys a lot, who knows what depression looks like, typically speaking, textbook speaking, in younger males? Yeah, absolutely. Agitation, irritability, anger, more outward behaviors. Boys that are depressed, traditionally speaking, textbook speaking, externalize it. They're not going to talk to you about it. They're not going to tell you that they feel sad. They're going to tell you they feel pissed off. They're going to be the kids that are fighting with other kids a lot of the time. They're going to be the aggressive kids, the kids that are challenging their teacher, their parents, their peers. That one's a struggle a lot of times for people to wrap their head around. That you might have this 11-year-old boy that's a challenge, that's having a behavior outburst, anger outburst, and you instantly might want to go toward maybe conduct disorder or something else that's more that outward behavioral type thing. A lot of times it's depression or a mood disorder that's underlying that. And I think that goes back to kind of what our society also teaches males and females. I think a lot of times, you know, our society says females, it's okay for you to feel sad, it's okay for you to talk about. Boys, you're not allowed to feel sad. You're not allowed to talk about how you feel sometimes. So it comes out a lot of times in anger. So that's something that's, I always like to point that out because that's really important because I think a lot of educators sometimes think that those boys are just being pains in the butt, but there's something else sometimes underlying that. Bipolar disorder. Believe it or not, we do have students, we've had students as young as third grade, second, third grade diagnosed with bipolar disorder. So that kind of gives you a sense of how severe some of the kids that we work with are. Who knows what bipolar disorder looks like? Give me some thoughts when you hear bipolar disorder. Still on the mood spectrum, but a kind of a different functioning of that.
A lot of fluctuation between manic episodes and depressive episodes.
Absolutely.
Mood changes frequently.
Yes. So what we look at with bipolar disorder is exactly what you said. The key component of bipolar disorder that really differentiates it, kind of makes it stand on its own 2 feet as apart from depression, is the fluctuating of moods. There are various subcategories of bipolar disorder I'm not going to get into that really kind of look at how long in between mood cycles to kind of see where you fall on that spectrum. But generally speaking, bipolar disorder is that swinging, the polarity. It could be pretty rapid, what they call rapid cycling. Sometimes within minutes to hours, the mood is going. Sometimes it's a slow cycle, it's a slow burn. It might be a buildup of months before you see the swing. Bipolar disorder really kind of goes by mood states. So you could be fluctuating from extreme euphoria to extreme anger. Extreme euphoria to extreme sadness. It doesn't necessarily have to be just that sadness component. There's also that really extreme kind of anger component that goes in as well. The interesting thing with bipolar disorder is, if you talk to a lot of people that have a diagnosis of bipolar disorder, they don't necessarily want to lose the manic episodes. Who knows what happens in a manic episode? Why they might want to hold on to that piece to it? They're really productive. A lot of them speak of great productivity in those manic episodes. So they'll tell you, I want my depression to go away. I want those episodes to go away, where I can't get out of bed, where I can't eat, where I can't socialize, where I can't take care of my hygiene. I want that to go away. I don't want my mania to go away though, because when I'm in a manic phase, maybe I'm creating great pieces of art. I might be creating great literature. They become really, really productive and hyper-focused on a task. A lot of people with bipolar disorder, I did a paper on this in undergrad. A lot of people with bipolar disorder there's a big connection between creativity and bipolar disorder, so it's a really interesting link there. And a lot of times that creativity comes out in those manic phases. So the big thing to remember with bipolar disorder is just the mania, the swinging of the poles. Mania looks different though in people. So mania could be kind of those hyper-productive, you're up, you're going. You might go on no sleep for like a week before you crash, because that's just where your chemistry is right at that moment. Other thing to look at with mania also does kind of have a dangerous side effect. Who knows kind of what the dangerous side effect to mania is? What are some examples of the danger?
No inhibitions.
No inhibitions. Risk-taking, increase in risk-taking behaviors. So for our students, that might look like sexual promiscuity, drinking, speeding, stealing their parents' credit cards sometimes, and like maxing out, going on these excessive spending sprees. So mania, while a lot of people that have the bipolar disorder will say they love their mania, there also is kind of that drawback to the mania. A lot of times when they come out of it, they kind of think, oh crap, now I kind of have to live with these consequences of what I did in that manic state sometimes. So bipolar disorder is a really interesting one. Again, in students and kids that we work with, you'll see it more as anger. When those mood shifts swing, it goes more to kind of the anger. Their mania becomes more anger than anything. As they age, sometimes it becomes more of that, what we think of as that manic episode. ADHD, this is probably the most common one that we all work with our students. Talk to me a little bit about ADHD. Who knows what ADHD is?
The ability to focus. I had it described as like having a file cabinet, and the files are just thrown in the cabinet, so it's difficult for them to pull things out of the cabinet because nothing's labeled.
I love that. I love that. I think that's a really great kind of visual for what a student with ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, kind of go through. Very unorganized, trouble focusing, trouble attending to task, trouble sit still in their seats. They like to sometimes kind of instigate their peers a little bit. Very impulsive behaviors. You see that a lot with ADHD. ADHD, again, this is probably the most common one. I think we all can probably think of a kid that we've worked with that may have had an ADHD diagnosis. Pretty easy to treat though. I mean, realistically, pretty easy to treat. You give them a psychostimulant, a Ritalin, an Adderall, whatever it may be. Sometimes that takes the edge off, kind of helps them attend. Really successful kind of rehab rates with behavior therapy, behavior modification therapy. Kids with ADHD a lot of times also get in-home services to kind of help teach the families how to kind of structure things at home and really put some things into place at home. Interesting thing about ADHD, if a kid truly does not have ADHD but is given a psychostimulant, what's going to happen?
Agitating.
Yeah, it has an agitating effect. So that's kind of a drawback to ADHD. It is very commonly diagnosed because it's really easy to diagnose for insurance purposes. They'll pay for that diagnosis pretty easily, not fight you on it when you have a kid. ADHD truly doesn't display itself until about age 11 though. So that's kind of a crazy thought too, because think about how many kids that we have under age 11 that have that diagnosis. So that's pretty scary thing, but that's the most common one. I think all of our kids kind of have that diagnosis somewhere in their paperwork. Schizophrenia, this is probably the most severe of the mental health issues. Schizophrenia is the most severe. Schizophrenia is a break with reality, it's a psychosis. This is the hearing voices, delusions, hallucinations, all that's something we commonly think of when we hear schizophrenia. Interesting thing with schizophrenia is you have positive and negative symptoms, they call them. The positive symptoms are the delusions, the hallucinations. The negative symptoms are like lack of volition, kind of no motivation. Those symptoms that are downers almost. They sometimes get like frozen faces sometimes. So there's a strong biological and genetic component to schizophrenia. We actually do have students that do have this diagnosis that we work with. The younger the diagnosis, the younger the student receives the diagnosis, a lot of times the worse the trajectory of treatment is for them. So if they have an early onset, it kind of works in reverse of most things. A lot of times you catch it early enough, you can intervene and kind of get them rehab. Schizophrenia is one of those ones that if you catch it early enough, that's usually not a good thing for their kind of outcome because it's a progressive disease. Real quick, autism spectrum disorder. I think, again, this is another common one. We all can probably think of somebody, a student that we work with that has autism. Autism is kind of those social skills deficits. Not really reading social situations correctly sometimes. They describe as literally being in your own world. A lot of those kids just are kind of in their own world. Their brains kind of function like computers sometimes. They have kind of a robotic speech when they do speak, a lot of delays in development with autism spectrum. Generalized anxiety disorder. This is another pretty common one. A lot of our kids kind of struggle with anxiety. Anxiety is more though than I'm nervous of public speaking. I'm nervous of being up here. This is kind of more of a chronic, long-term, generalized about every situation. We'll give these kids some anxiety. Anxiety also can mimic ADHD, so there's a little bit of overlap there with ADHD. So some of those kids that might be diagnosed with ADHD before age 11 might actually have anxiety underlying it, because it's kind of that irritability, that impulsivity, that inability to focus and sit still because your mind's going 50,000 different directions. Last two, obsessive compulsive disorder. Obsessive compulsive disorder is really interesting because a lot of people think of it as like the chronic hand washing and all that good stuff. It's way more than that. It's really debilitating for people that are kind of stuck in that pattern of it. OCD for a lot of our kids, it does fall under the anxieties, but for a lot of our kids, it really can be debilitating. If they can't do their ritual, whatever it may be, it doesn't have to be a physical ritual, it can be a mental ritual that you might not even be seeing, we might not be seeing as adults. Think about that. If your mind is so preoccupied with those rituals, you're not going to focus, you're not going to care about your math work, you're not going to care about your reading work. You need to get through that ritual to make sure that whatever bad thing that you think is going to happen doesn't happen. Finally, PTSD, post-traumatic stress. This one's on the rise. It's on the rise because we have, a lot of these kids have trauma now. They've witnessed a lot of things that most adults don't even have to witness. That these kids are witnessing at 4, 5, 6 years old. So really, PTSD is anxiety again. It's flashbacks. It's chronic fear because they literally feel like their life is going to be over based on whatever kind of that triggering incident was. So anxiety, the PTSD is anxiety or kind of managing that environment around them. It's a lot of environmental triggers. So one of the programs we have in place for these kids is called our CTS program, Comprehensive Therapeutic Emotional Support. It's geared for students who have kind of these more in-depth mental health issues that we just talked briefly about. Similar in concept to a partial hospitalization. I don't know if anybody knows what a partial hospitalization program is. So it's kind of a step up, step down type program. So students might be coming out of inpatient stays or RTF stays, but they're not quite ready to go back into their home district. That's where we catch them to try to give them those skills they need to be successful moving into their home, back to their home school districts. Also a step up. So these students are at risk of doing an inpatient or an RTF stay. We try to catch them to kind of divert them from those units to give them the skills, hopefully, to divert them. They have therapeutic support around the clock. We have social workers in the classrooms that are with them all day. From the time they enter until the time they leave, that social worker's in there. The social worker does run like kind of their own group time and individual time, but also they're with them during their class time. So if a student's escalating during math class, maybe the social worker's able to kind of catch that antecedent to that behavior pretty quickly, hopefully intervene pretty quickly with them, pull them out of class, maybe do some individual work with them, and then get them back into class to kind of function throughout the rest of their day.
So what's unique about our study, and we're going to show you a couple of slides in a minute about behaviors and some specific students, is that we did this before we put a social worker in the Fab Lab, and now we have a full-time social worker that's in the Fab Lab doing group time, because what we found was as students are working with their hands, they're more likely to open up to that social worker as opposed to sitting in chairs in a circle to talk to the social worker in group time. So it has worked out very well for us that the social worker is able to do a whole bunch of activities on mindfulness and self-regulation during the same time that the students are actually making something in the lab.
Yeah.
It's worked very well.
It has worked very well, and like Jenny said, this is the first year that we've done that. Our students, their classroom social workers have always gone with them in the Fab Lab, but more so just to provide kind of behavior support and kind of make sure that their behavior management plans are being followed in the Fab Lab as they go into that environment. This year we did put in a social worker that kind of flows between all the Fab Labs. She has a rotating schedule.
She knows how to run some machines.
Yeah,
she knows how
we
to
train
do
on the
projects
machines,
in addition to the social work.
and she begins each Fab Lab session with those groups doing a mindfulness exercise with them, mindfulness activity. And then she kind of circulates, like Jenny said, as they're working on a project, she circulates the room to kind of reinforce those skills with them and to work through problem solving and decision-making skills, frustration tolerance, kind of right there in those moments. And the kids are opening up as they're engaged. That's what we found. That's kind of what led to this study. So just given that we're short on time here, Jenny and I did touch briefly on this about what the social worker's role is within that Fab Lab. They are licensed, they're master's level, and they focus really on therapeutic interventions and techniques, as well as working with the family dynamics, the school dynamics, and all that stuff to kind of create that whole continuum of care for those students. So when we came up with this idea, we had a student a couple of years ago, myself and our assistant executive director were in Colonial, and we had a student, Robert, who was kind of melting down, having a pretty big meltdown actually. He was out of the classroom, he was trying to kick in the door, he was calling everybody but their names in the hallways. You know, had gotten pretty aggressive in class, refused to leave the area though. Robert has a diagnosis of mood disorder and ADHD at that time. No contact with biological parents. He lived with his grandmother. His grandmother was his primary guardian. He had no idea where his biological parents were at this point. So he had a really big kind of contextual situation stressor on top of his mental health diagnoses. We also had issues with med compliance with him. He wasn't taking his medications consistently. Grandma, not intentionally, but just would sometimes forget to give them to him in the mornings because she was busy with other things and just trying to get him out the door. She wasn't one of those that was intentionally withholding it. She would just forget, have to bring it up sometimes later in the day. It would throw him off his whole cycle, so we were dealing with that. However, Robert was intelligent, very, very smart kid. A lot of our kids that do have that severe emotional health, mental health need are very intelligent. They really are high functioning intellectually. And Robert also, when he wasn't kind of escalated, he was really kind and he was helpful. He wanted to help his peers. He was one of the helpers for the teachers in the classroom. So there was a lot of good to Robert. We just, at that moment, were catching the other end of Robert. So as he was kind of escalating out in the hallway, and Mr. Martin, our assistant executive director, and myself were trying to de-escalate him because we happened to be in that building, nothing was working. And we finally said, this was right when we put the Fab Lab in up there. And Robert hadn't had much exposure at that point to the Fab Lab. So we brought him up to the Fab Lab. Within minutes, I mean, you could just physically see the muscles start to relax. You know, the language improved. So engaged at that point, they were stickers with the vinyl cutter. But very engaged in that. A whole different Robert than we saw 10 minutes prior to that. And that's when we started thinking, why aren't we putting these kids in the Fab Lab more? Originally we started the Fab Lab, we wanted to just use it for our alternative education students, our regular ed students, and our high school students that were up there. We thought they could handle the machines better. We didn't want to damage anything, destroy anything. Our little guys, sometimes when they flip out, they go, and it's property destruction and damage. It's expressive. So we were very, very hesitant about that. We started kind of slowly building and implementing the Fab Lab into those schedules. At first we used it as kind of reward for those kids. You know, if they had all their points by Friday, it could be part of their reward menu. We then did it where it was once a week. It was a scheduled class for them. We then scheduled it in 2 times a week. Now it is part of their daily rotation. It's part of a daily class with them. And what we're going to talk about here as we move forward, again, just for time, we're going to have to cut some of this out.
So Chartlytics, when we started talking about the impact, we saw what it did for Robert, we made changes to schedules, we were seeing a true impact to students. Students who were struggling were really coming into the lab and were focused, and we were not seeing the same issues we were seeing outside of the lab. So we decided to partner with Chartlytics, which is a data collection system, so that we could start our own internal study. Because everyone thought we were crazy, because we had lots of stories, but we had no data to back up the stories. We said, you wouldn't believe what happens in the lab. You wouldn't believe the changes in these kids. So we decided to start tracking behaviors, and we used Chartlytics to do that.
So we had a couple case studies we're going to talk about. We have a student coming out of our elementary classroom, and these studies were completed from second semester last year. So from January to the end of the school year, roughly, is when we tracked the behavior for this study. So it was the initial classroom to pilot the study, 16 weeks of data collection, and then we have a 7th grader as well. We added a little bit later into the year to kind of do a comparison between ages, so we don't have as much data at that point on that student, but really interesting data that we do have. So case study 1, student, the alias is Mario, he's age 9. Average IQ, again, no true learning concerns that we have for the student. Referred for special education's home district in 1st grade, which had been 2 years prior, because he was behind in academics and demonstrating behavioral issues. So the behavioral issues trying to impede the academic performance, even though there was no true learning problem. He then was referred to us at Colonial. So the behaviors we really wanted to track, these were some of the big behaviors of concern. Punching, kicking, spitting, leaving classroom, killing racial slurs, swearing, and explicit sexual language, lying, and refusal to complete tasks. That's a pretty lengthy laundry list, right? Function of behavior, we did an FDA on the student. Function of the behaviors to gain attention and escape undesired demand. 13 student incident reports from the CTS classroom currently at that school year when we started the collection. We saw that even though he did have, you'll see on the graph, some slight behaviors in the Fab Lab when the study started, very, very significantly lower still than what we saw in the classroom, and none that were at a level of an actual behavior discipline referred to the principal. So I don't know, the charts are probably kind of hard to see, but if you can see, so the behavior that we were tracking was verbal refusal when given us a command. This graph is in the classroom, this graph is in the Fab Lab. So I don't know if you can see the...
You can see the difference.
Yeah, you can see the difference. A lot of incidents of that in the classroom, 1 in the Fab Lab, 1 that warranted any kind of tracking. You know, we do kind of talk too about, we do this presentation, people say, well, isn't it just because they're given a desired task, the Fab Lab's fun. It is more than that, and that's what our study that Jenny, if you were in the first session, talked about with the Mid-Atlantic REL that we really want to delve into.
The Mid-Atlantic REL wants to do a study to dig deeper, because this is just on the surface, this is what we saw, this is what we collect. But we really want to dig deep into the why. Why is this happening? Why is it so different in this fabrication lab for these students than it is in our regular classrooms? Even though they're doing project-based learning in there, it just seems different. So is it the environment? Is it the instruction? What truly is it that's making the difference for our kids? So our goal is to complete this study with the REL so that we can find out really what's working.
And try to account for all those variables that we might be happening as well. Next case study, Evelyn's one of my favorites. She has been with us. She was in 7th grade last year. She had been with us since she was in 3rd grade. So we really kind of seen this student kind of grow. Again, average IQ, pretty high functioning, pretty intelligent. No significant learning issues that way. Other health impairment was her official IEP diagnosis. Her mental health diagnoses were bipolar disorder with psychotic features, ODD and ADHD as well, and PTSD. Referred to special education due to academic behavioral difficulties. Again, we picked her up when she was in 3rd grade. At this point, she was in 7th grade. CTS teacher reports the following problem behaviors: yelling and swearing at staff and peers, refusal to follow directions, leaving the classroom, slamming doors, and responding to teacher with oppositional statements. The FBA showed the function was gaining attention and avoiding tasks. She was written up 4 times in the past month during instruction in the classroom. Increase at this time of the year, had not received any writings prior. So Evelyn was really interesting too, because she would have these periods of nothing where she was on track and then it would fall apart. And that was always her cycle the whole time we had her. Was then she would start cycling again and ramping it up, and we would start seeing it. So we caught her at the time when she was starting to increase the behaviors. She was written up 0 times during instruction in the Fab Lab. So again, you can see the behavior they were tracking was kind of inappropriate language in the CTS versus the Fab Lab. All over the board here in the classroom, stagnant here.
And we're talking the same days that she's in the
Yes.
classroom, and you see those X's on that side, are the same days she's in the lab, and that behavior's not happening.
I'm just trying to understand the difference, and I know there's gonna be that study, but is there project-based learning type stuff in the other classes as well?
There is.
Okay.
There is project-based, granted not to this level,
Right.
but they do project-based learning
Yes.
in the classrooms. Again, this particular student was never going to be the type of student that was going to be able to sit for 45 minutes and do a worksheet and do a discussion. She was one that needed to be up and moving and working with her hands and circulating. So when we're moving to more project-based within the classrooms, which I think is also going to help us kind of tease this out a little bit, but there is still some project-based learning going on within the classroom.
It's drastic, but not as drastic maybe as maybe a typical classroom versus the Fab Lab.
I think it is hard to say typical, because our students
Yeah.
that come to our schools aren't typical students. I mean,
Right.
these are the students with severe
Severe,
mental health
yeah.
needs that come to us, but, I mean, our teachers aren't standing there lecturing,
Yeah.
because that doesn't work, and they know that. So there's a lot of projects, a lot of activities that
lot
happen
of
in the
differentiating.
classroom before they go in
Yeah.
here. But we're just trying to figure out why it is so.
Yeah, so drastic.
Okay.
So great question though. So the second
Yeah,
behavior was walking out the,
Do you differentiate the time that they go into the Fab Lab?
Yeah, yes, we tracked at different times of the
yeah,
day.
different times of the day. We did random samplings.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's still coming out to be kind of the same.
The same.
So then the second behavior that they really kind of focused on with this was walking out of the classroom. Evelyn would just leave the classroom, you hear door slamming in the hallway, you hear her up cussing somebody out as she's walking up the hallway. This happened pretty frequently. So you can kind of see the data over there. This is in the classroom. In the Fab Lab, she stayed and maintained.
And this is also a variety of classes
Yes,
that she's
yeah.
in on the left.
Yeah, track it in different
So
classes.
It may be different people she's interacting with as well. So,
Mhm.
I mean, there are lots of components to the study that we need to definitely dig in much deeper. But the immediate impact is just truly amazing when I look at those charts.
Yeah.
And, I mean, we talk about it all the time because we see it when we're in our buildings, but to see the actual data that says these kids are not having any issues when they're in there at all. They are engaged, they are working, and it's just changing them completely.
Do you, I don't know if you've got to this point yet or not, do you use Fab Lab as an incentive within the classroom to help to control behaviors?
So-
We do sometimes, but we've gotten away from that because we want all students to have the experience and not just be as a reward for students. So we really have been scheduling all students in there every single day.
And they are giving it kind of that extra incentive. It's more of an extra, like think about it like an extra gym class maybe a student can earn. Yeah, so we do also have that built in as well. That it's still part of their.
That's what I meant, supplemental.
Yeah, it's still part of the reward menu, but it is like a daily class for them. And then on Fridays, if they earn it, they can still choose to go in there for some extra time. So kind of the lessons that we learned going through this. Again, the first one kind of I think was pretty obvious to us that active engagement and project-based learning have proven to be the most effective strategies in decreasing problematic behaviors. IU1 Fabrication Lab and accompanying curriculum are proving to have therapeutic and behavioral benefits for students with significant mental health needs, as kind of demonstrated by some of the numbers that we were seeing. Decreasing challenging behaviors and increasing access to mental health and technologically project-based learning, students are prepared to transition to and sell life after graduation. It's also part of what we want to nail down to. Those students are transitioning away from us. What skills from the Fab Lab are they able to take with them to post-secondary? placements. We do have one student that actually got an internship with us at the IU based on her work in the Fab Lab. She kind of interned with our tech department to pick up some skills.
And we've had a lot of success from our students who come to us. One girl, for example, came to us pretty much mute, didn't talk, went into the Fab Lab, and it totally changed her to a completely different person. She became a leader, she led the group, she showed kids how to use the machines. She went off to college, she became a hostess at a restaurant, and we all said, are you sure you're talking about the same girl who didn't speak the year before?
Yeah, she was like a leader in the building.
She really, the Fab Lab, we've just seen so many anecdotal stories about changing the way our students approach their careers and what they're thinking they can do and the successes they can have. So there are so many components to this study that we're looking at, not just the mental health, but also that career exploration path as well.
So, you know, what's next for us? So we are, as Jenny mentioned, we're putting in our third stationary lab. We have 2 right now. We have one in Colonial, which is where the kind of those students came from that we did the initial study. We have one in Waynesburg, down in Greene County at our Waynesburg site, and we're putting one in, supposed to be ready in the fall of 2019, our Washington County site at Laboratory. We have 2 mobile labs. Are we gonna second the third one?
We have one regular mobile lab, it's a large trailer, we're getting a van this fall.
So we have 2. We'll have 2 mobile labs in the fall. As we mentioned, we do have a social worker now that just works with our Fab Labs, within our Fab Labs, collecting data on the students, doing some mindfulness stuff, some different therapeutic techniques as they're engaged in those projects. So she's rotating between all the Fab Labs and working on kind of that SEL component with those students, tracking data. And then our continuing study, we do have an agreement with Southwood Residential Treatment Facility. Southwood's in our neck of the woods. It's our child and adolescent psychiatric hospital. We provide them with supervision, educational supervision for their RTFs through the IU to one of our supervisors. So we really also want to incorporate them into part of the study because they would be the most kind of extreme, the neediest on that scale, that continuum of care. So we're really interested to see what shows up with them because they just started going to the Fab Lab and they're starting to see really good results as well.
I will also say that the Fab Foundation, who was part of our initial grant to get our Fab Lab, you can Google them and go to their website, the Fab Foundation. They are very interested in the social worker aspect in the Fab Lab, and we will be featured on that Stokes DF page. This spring we'll have 3 lessons in a special place on their page that are featured for how to incorporate social work into digital fabrication.
Can I ask how much that initial grant was? What did it take to get this off?
It was over $1 million, and now listen, that funded the stationery, that funded some personnel, and that also funded the mobile, so it was a lot. It was a lot of moving parts, but honestly, for our second lab, we funded the equipment out of the second lab for a little over $100,000. But we do purchase more top-of-the-line equipment because we, over the last 3 years, have not had any issues with 3D printers or laser cutters. Other people who have purchased more inexpensive equipment have a lot more issues and their equipment's down. So we do make that investment to purchase a little bit more expensive equipment so that it continues to run.
I mean, what's the ratio from social worker to kids? Like how many kids?
So we have within our classroom social workers, the max that we can have in those classrooms are 12 students per classroom. So it's 1 social worker per max of 12 students. And then in the Fab Lab, Michelle, who's a social worker in the Fab Labs, she's in there all day. So again, it's about, because those kids go into classes, so it's a max of 12 that are rotating to her at a time.
So caseload-wise though?
So the interesting thing, so caseload-wise, our classroom social workers carry up to 12. Interesting, Michelle, because of what she's doing, she's not really carrying a direct caseload. Because all her work is just done within that Fab Lab. So if something's needed, she coordinates with their classroom social worker. She's more of a support, yeah.
And she's the one who's doing the social emotional learning?
And within the Fab Lab, the mindfulness, yeah.
Support.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, this whole school, they all pretty much have diagnoses?
To get referred to that school, they have to have some high level of emotional health, mental health, behavioral health need, and then we have an alternative education unit.
We have approximately, 70 or 80 students in that school right now that we service.
Your Fab Lab teacher is, what certification are they carrying?
So what's interesting is our 2 stationary teachers that we currently have both carry math certifications. So So there is no certification for a Fab Lab person. For us, we found that our two math teachers they were the right fit for us. But there are many Fab Labs that are in our districts, and we've taken that to them and they've implemented in their districts. They have a tech ed teacher, they have a business teacher, there's an art teacher, there's somebody that's a science teacher, so it's just a variety of backgrounds.
Because we can find it ticket.
Mhm.
For our secondary kids, so,
Yeah.
yeah, it'd be
We have
nice.
two great math teachers who just took to
Yeah,
the
they're
machines
excellent,
and
yeah.
ran with them.
And then we do have the, like we've talked about, the Mid-Atlantic Growl study that's gonna be starting this fall. We're working with them now, to make it more formalized and tease out some of those variables. Sarah Durzo is over here. She's our, curriculum and innovation design
Coordinator of
coordinator.
Design and Innovation.
Sarah's title's changed multiple times with us. She's gonna talk just real briefly about.
Yeah, so if you guys have any other questions, or if you want quick access to some of this info, I know we talked about like $1.5 million, it's a lot of money. There is a article that we posted on 100.org. It's an educational site, so they have cool ideas if you just want to explore other things. But definitely check this out because it's called Fabricating Change and Mental Wellness, which is what this presentation was about. But there's videos, you can see the case studies that are up there. I wrote it up here, so it's just 100.org. If you search Fab Lab /mental health, we will pop right up. But there's videos, different ways that you connect. You can see our Fab Labs, different studies. But this is all stuff that you could take back and look at and do more research. And then I have Jenny and Joe's email up there for you if you need to contact them for further information.
And I do have business cards up here too, and if you wanna follow us on Twitter, at IU1 Fab Lab, and we post all kinds of info on there too, so. If you have questions, please come see us. We'd love to have you out at our labs. We'd
Absolutely.
also love to Skype with you, if you can't make a visit out, or a phone call with you, we're always available for questions.
Thanks,
Thank you
guys.
very